Welcome to Side Hustle Paradise. I'm your host, Marc, Guberti, the podcasting coach, bringing you expert sessions from top side hustlers and business owners, where we teach you how to boost your income and do the work that you love. Now, we've talked a lot about different side hustles you could do, different ways to boost your income, but at the end of the day, we have to think about profit. We have to think about how much money we truly have versus how much money we owe to other people. And one of the things that really stops a lot of people from pursuing their side hustle full time or even starting a side hustle is debt. And where debt continues to pile up, it's essential for us to learn how to pay it off. And we have such a great speaker who's going to share with us his wisdom. He is an attorney and the blogger behind Financial Panther, a blog about personal finance, travel hacking, and side hustling using the sharing economy. He paid off $87,000 worth of student loans in just 2.5 years by choosing not to live life like a big shot lawyer. So our guest who joins us is none other than Kevin Ha. Kevin, welcome to the summit.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
And I mean, when it comes to paying off debt, it's such a, you don't really wish it on anyone, but if you are in this situation, you do have to look to pay it off. And people have varying different incomes, varying different lifestyles. But I'm wondering if you could share with us some of the things you were able to do to pay off that debt within just 2.5 years.
Yeah, for sure. So, the thing about paying off debt is there's no like magic or anything to it. It's basically income and whatever your debt is. And the less you spend, the more you can put at your debt. That's like the basic thing you have to do. So for myself, it was just about getting my income higher and keeping my expenses lower. And this is a part that you can do both things. And, you see it happen a lot, especially with people who are kind of going in into fields like law, medicine, that kind of thing, where you kind of fall into the whole lifestyle inflation trap, which is what a lot of my fellow attorneys do, where, you graduate from law school, you get that first job, and then you instantly upgrade everything in your life, nicer apartment, nicer car, and all that stuff just makes it so it raises up your base level of life. That makes it so much harder to do it. And if you can just stay at where you were before, which is like, when you think about people who if you have student loans, for example, you were kind of used to living like, that college or that grad student lifestyle. And then suddenly if you raise it up, it gets much harder to bring it back down. So that's kind of how I think about it, is to kind of avoid that like instant lifestyle inflation, which a lot of people kind of fall into.
And I love the way you describe it as instant lifestyle inflation. And obviously, we're talking to a wide variety of people. Some of you may be college students who, this is great advice that you could apply right now. For other people, they may have already inflated their lifestyle, and it's a matter of properly deflating it so you have more money to pay off all the different things that you have to pay off. Now, I'm wondering if you could share with us how we develop that mindset where we don't inflate our lifestyles, because a lot of people, they spend more than they make. And I mean, I feel like this part is so important because you could learn how to make more money with side hustles, but like if you learn how to make an extra $600 a month from side hustles and you're like, oh, I could spend an extra $610 per month, this summit does nothing for you. So how can we avoid that trap for ourselves?
Yeah, and a lot of this is just like the mental game of this is you just have to learn to be, and this is hard for all of us to do, is you have to learn to be happy with, the things you already have, and it's not an easy thing to do, but like if you kind of start, if you just kind of accept that, like, and that like it doesn't have to be like that forever, it can go up later, but like if you've got something you need to do now and you just be happy with what you have, that is a big thing. The other thing that I think, and this is something I did a lot, is to kind of compare yourself to the right people. And so what I mean by this is when I graduated from law school and started my first real job, the natural thing that most people are going to do is compare themselves to the other big shot lawyers. And so if you're not spending like them, you start feeling like, oh, I must be like, doing something wrong, right? But if you kind of realize like, oh, most people are not making that much. And so if you can understand like other people are living okay or living fine and happy with less, you can kind of do that too. So for me, I was lucky enough to graduate law school and start like a job that paid well. But I compared myself to my friends who were not lawyers. They were just like regular, regular people with regular jobs. And so as a result, even though I wasn't spending like the lawyers, I didn't feel like I was spending, like I was living like way, way, below like a normal person. I felt like I was just living like a normal person instead of a big shot lawyer.
And I mean, it's important to compare yourself to the right people. Like, you don't want to compare and despair, because that, like, if you compare yourself to like the person who's like way far ahead of you, that's a bad comparison. But to compare yourself to people like a little closer at your level, who if there's something that they're doing better than you, it's something you can more easily add to your work ethic, to your mindset, where you don't have to make a cataclysmic jump or something like that to get to the person's level who you're trying to compare. Now, you did mention earlier, and it really just comes down to income and expenses. And we talked about expenses, how to, like, keep those down, like not inflating your lifestyle. But can you talk about some of the ways that you have boosted your income and the side hustles in particular?
Yeah. So, one of the things that I did a lot to increase my income, and it was to do something I kind of call monetizing your life. And this is something that's really interesting about the world we live in today, where it's possible to kind of do things that kind of fit into your life and make money. And so an example is I got really into this whole gig economy, sharing economy and stuff. And, a lot of people kind of look at that and it's like, oh, it's a waste of time. But I think if you use it the right way, like the way I was using a lot of these, you can fit them into all these moments of your day. And so an example was when I first started doing, I started doing like Postmates and DoorDash deliveries and these kind of things. And I would do them on my bike. And I was commuting, like I biked to work and I would bike home. And so at the end of the day, I would just kind of turn these apps on and see if I could get some deliveries going back towards my house. And so, it's like I was getting paid to bike home at the end of the day. And it's like I'm already stuck in the office for, 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day. And so now I'm like getting paid to go home. And it's like I'm getting paid to exercise in a way because, I'm biking around. And so this is kind of the way I thought about it, is like, how can you kind of use the stuff you're already doing and make a little extra income while doing that?
I love that example, because with the current economy we're in, with the current opportunities, there is that freedom of expression, like freedom of like extra creativity. Not to say like, those things were around like before the gig economy, but like it's to another level, where being able to have a route that matches up with your route on your way home and getting paid to do that, unheard of. Like, but now that is possible. So it's just a matter of tapping into that creativity. And I do love the biking, because a lot of people will say, I can't find the time to exercise. And now all of a sudden you're getting paid to do just that. So it is definitely a very fascinating concept. And I'm wondering, how can we think that way for ourselves? Because some people watching us may be like, I can't bike to work, it's too far. So what's your advice for us doing something like that for our own situations?
What do you mean? Like if you have like, if you live farther away, or if you're like, I guess my thought is there's a lot of ways to kind of monetize the things you're already doing. So like an example is if you have a house, for example, and this is something I've been doing since 2016. I rent out a spare room in my house on Airbnb. And the reason I did this is because I live in this house that's a 4-bedroom house, and I have a guest room that never gets used. And a lot of people, a surprising number of people, have a guest room that goes unused. This is something that you can use and like monetize that piece of your house. So, I've been house hacking in this way uh, for long enough that's like that room can almost cover my entire mortgage just from one room in my house. And let's say you're not comfortable doing that. Okay. Well, another thing I started doing is when I'm traveling, I'll put up my house on Airbnb and rent out the house while I'm traveling. So it's like covering my cost of travel. And it's this house that would otherwise sit empty during that span.
Yeah.
And so, and especially if you do it during big events, which, depending on where you live, there's probably some big event in your area every year that you just maybe don't even think about. So, when I first started renting out the house and going traveling was when the Super Bowl was here. I live in Minneapolis, and the Super Bowl was here in 2018. And so I put up my house on Airbnb, and a 2-night stay, I made $2,500 for 2 nights. And I went out of town during that weekend just to escape the cold and the crowds and everything here.
Wow.
And so this is just an example of something. It's like an asset I have that would otherwise sit empty, and I can use it to kind of generate extra income to, for whatever purposes I need that income for.
And I mean, Airbnb is a very fascinating concept. I'm wondering, because I like the idea of an asset that would otherwise be sitting now gets utilized. Now, all of a sudden you're paying off your mortgage, and that is the biggest debt that a lot of people have. So the one thing I feel like a lot of people think of is that trust factor. Like, you're trusting someone into your home. And if you do have that spare room, you bring someone in, but then you have to cater to that person. So how do you manage that with your time and trust the people coming in?
Yeah. So one of the things is I guess you have to kind of take the idea that most people are going to be good and respectful. In my experience, I've hosted, probably over 150, 200 guests maybe in my time. And I've never had anyone do anything really bad or disrespectful. And so, there are ways to kind of make sure, that people aren't going to do anything bad. Like if you are live, if you're renting out a room in your house, for example, and you have a pretty thorough profile on Airbnb, most people who are going to do something bad are not going to pick that place. If you live there. And same thing with my house, I make it very clear, this is my house, I live here, and it just seems to keep that way. And, another thing you can do is I tend to charge more compared to the other listings in my area. And that kind of helps to self-select the, potential partiers or that kind of thing. And, but it kind of make it clear, I am around and I live here and I'm, keep an eye on things. People don't really, I think people tend to be respectful.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I mean, if you're in the presence, it definitely helps. And in the case of a Super Bowl where someone you got people go, they're there for the game, and that's going to be where they hang out. Now, you talked about a few different side hustles, Airbnb. I know we focused on that a little bit. How do you manage all these different side hustles? You've got a whole bunch of different side hustles, a whole bunch of different places to divert your time. Do you go on Uber? Do you go on Postmates? Which one do you go on in a given day? How do you manage all these side hustles?
Right. And that is hard. The thing is, I just kind of pick the things that fit in with what I'm doing anyway. So, I don't try to say oh, I'm going to go and do this thing for an hour. It's just kind of I'm going this way, or I feel like doing some exercising and biking around for however long I feel like it. So let's just find some stuff that's working for that time. And so that's kind of how I do it. Um, and in the winter, for example, I don't like being outside as much in the winter. And so actually I did this today. I found something on this grocery delivery app called Shipped, which is you go and shop for groceries, and it's delivered to a office. And because it's so close, I can walk it through the Skyway system here in Minneapolis, so I don't have to go outside. And so it's I had an hour, half an hour to spare. So it's during lunchtime. So I was I'll just go and do this delivery. And it was a huge order of waters and stuff. And after I delivered that, they tipped me $39. So that one delivery, I made $57. And that's way out of the ordinary. But it's that took me 45 minutes or something to do. And it was well worth my time, I thought. And it was just something that fit in with my day.
Yeah, and that's the key. I mean, Kevin's been really focusing on this theme that, it fits within his day. It's not something that goes beyond stuff he would already do. So, maybe you walk and eat your lunch instead of just sitting at a table and eating, and then you end up with extra money from the side hustle. And these are the little things that, $57 extra, it doesn't sound like a lot, but if you keep doing it and you keep repeating it, then it just really adds up, and you can compound it with, investing and doing that kind of stuff. And I mean, it's just very powerful being able to incorporate it in your day instead of doing something outside of what you're already doing.
Right, exactly. And speaking of that, the lunch thing, it's like this is something I did a lot when I had my regular day job. I would walk dogs during my lunch hour, and it was like I would literally like go across the street to an apartment building and walk dogs there during my lunch hour instead of sitting at my desk, just like watching YouTube. I would like get out there.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a variety of side hustles to choose from, and it's just a matter of picking the ones that feel the best for you. And when you find a new side hustle, do you like go all in on it for a little bit? I know you mentioned a little earlier, it was like, I just go with the one that feels best for me. But when you find a new side hustle, what do you do to sort of validate if it's going to be good for you?
Yeah, so it does take a little bit of time to kind of figure out how it fits into whatever it is you're doing. I always try to give things a chance before I totally quit on it. And so the thing is, I'll just like give myself like at least a month or something, just like see if I like understand how it works, because you know just like anything, it takes time to get better at something. And the good thing about these kind of gig economy, sharing economy stuff is you don't have to like use up any money or capital. You're just using up your time, which is like you know if it doesn't work out, you just can move on to something else.
Yeah, I love that. If something doesn't work, just move on to something else. I mean, that is such a great insight because it captures the idea where you don't have to be dependent on one thing. If Airbnb doesn't work, do something else. If that doesn't work, do something else. There's like a lot of different things you can be doing. And with all these side hustles, they can add up really nicely if you are going to stay committed to them. I know Kevin has Financial Panther, which is his blog where he goes into a lot more detail on this stuff, including how you can pay off debt. And it just comes down to earning more, spending less. That's a very basic formula to it. And Kevin has shared a lot of that with us today. For people who are wondering where can we find you, follow you on your journey, where are some good places for us to go?
Yeah, you can find me on my blog, financialpanther.com. You can also find me on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. The same usernames for all those.
Well, Kevin, we'll have those links for everyone to view. But once again, thank you so much for coming on Side Hustle Paradise. It was such a pleasure to have you here today.
Yeah, it was great to speak with you.